This week on Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut, we're talking about criminals impersonating the government to commit fraud.
So we really just want to make sure that people understand that the government does not call you unsolicited. The government will never ask you for a prepaid gift card.
We give you the red flags to look for when it comes to government imposters targeting you. Then,
according to the Federal Trade Commission, $445 million was lost to government imposter scams last year. The average loss, $3,000.
Kristen tells us about a new government grant scam circulating through social media. Plus,
1 in 3 military veteran adults reported losing money to these type of service-related scams. Coming up, I'll tell you what veterans and their families need to know to protect themselves.
And scam stories.
I go into the community room in the middle of the room and I holler out loud, "This is a scam!"
See how criminals are using Medicare to target their victims.
Welcome to Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut. Today, we're learning all about government imposters. But first, we'd love to hear from you. Is there a certain scam you'd like us to spread awareness about? Comment below, and we'll consider it for a future show. So, what are we talking about when we say imposters?
Anytime someone pretends to be from a government agency and seeks to either get money or get information about you, personal identifying information about you, like your social security number, for example, those are all sorts of government scams. An agency, someone from a law enforcement agency or from the IRS, or even from, someone dealing with Medicaid or Medicare, they're not going to call you directly and ask you for all this really personal information over the phone.
They're just a constant on our Fraud Watch Network helpline. So I would say recently we've heard a lot about Medicare imposters. That's where someone calls a Medicare beneficiary saying that they can get extra services or they need a new card, really just looking for that Medicare number. Additionally, we're still hearing a lot about the Social Security imposter scam. Kind of morphs a little bit into pretending they're from the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration Division, saying that your social security number was found to be connected with a crime, and there were drugs and guns found in a car. Oftentimes, they always say it was found in Texas, and that they're going to come and arrest you unless you pay, unless you give them more personal information.
Dealing with taxes, Medicare, Social Security, it can be confusing, even when you aren't being victimized. If you've been targeted by one of these criminals, please know, it's not your fault, and you're not alone. Next up, Kristen is with us from the Better Business Bureau to talk about a government grant scam circulating on social media.
A Connecticut resident reported to BBB that an acquaintance reached out to her over social media. She received a message that said this person had received some money from the government. It was a government grant, and that she should do the same thing. So she got the information and she reached out. She promised to pay $300. She paid that amount, and she was then asked for more money. And eventually she paid $3,500. It wasn't until they said they needed another $5,000 to deliver the grant that she ended the transaction at that point. But they did not end the conversation with her. They continuously harassed her for more money. She even got the police involved, and when they intervened, it didn't help. The scammers continue to harass her until she finally just blocked them. So the lesson there is, if someone reaches out to you on social media, call them up and say, "Did you really send me this message?" Because in reality, that acquaintance's social media platform was actually hacked. It wasn't them, it was a scammer. And then block the person right away. As soon as you know it's a scam, delete that text message, don't respond to the email, or hang up the phone.
She's got a good point. It's best not to answer, block, or hang up on these criminals, because otherwise they'll try to keep engaging. We'll have more examples of the tactics imposters use coming up. But now we're going to take a look at the red flags to look for.
There's been criminals since the beginning of time, and there'll be criminals after I'm done here on this earth. But that doesn't mean we need to make it easier for them. So that's why knowing the red flags and how actually the government works with these scams is crucial. Number one, the government will never, ever call you unsolicited over the phone. They will never text you, and they will certainly never have communication with you via social media. Number two, the government will never ask for payment via a prepaid gift card, peer-to-peer app, and they will never ask for cryptocurrency as payment. And number three, the government will never threaten your job, threaten you with firing, threaten you with arrest, any of that over the phone.
Amy is with the AARP Fraud Watch Network, and they are fielding hundreds of calls a day. So remember, if you or a loved one think you've been targeted by a scam, call the number on your screen. Next up, see a couple of ways criminals are using Medicare to commit fraud.
I actually walked into a genetic testing scam. It was at a senior housing complex, low income Medicare beneficiaries. And when I walked into the actual apartment complex, I was actually going to meet with one of my volunteers. And when I walked in there, and I was supposed to meet her in the community room, but the community room was filled with residents. And this guy approaches me and he says, "Oh, I know you." I said, "Oh, you know me, really?" He said, "Yeah, I met you before. I know you. I've seen you before," and all of this stuff. And I'm like, "I don't know you, sir." And so I said, "What are you guys doing here?" And he said, "Oh, we're doing genetic testing." And I said, "Oh, you're doing genetic testing, really?" I said, "Well, I thought it was my understanding that you had to have it authorized by your primary care physician. How do you guys do genetic testing at a senior housing complex?" He says to me, "Oh, we have our own doctors that approve the genetic testing, and they get everything to go through. You should have it done too." He gave me his office number, his cell phone number, the flyer, and all of this other stuff. And so after he finishes giving it to me, I go into the community room in the middle of the room and I holler out loud, "This is a scam." There's a girl in the corner that's taking personal information from the Medicare beneficiaries. People have their Social Security card out, their Medicare card out. So I walked up to her and I said, "How are you protecting their personal information by putting it into that tablet?" And she says to me, "Oh, we do this all the time." I said, "That's not what I asked you. I asked you, how are you protecting these individuals?" Once I found that information out, what I did was I did a mass email to all the residential services coordinators in Connecticut and let them know that these scammers are out there and there's genetic testing, and explained it in detail. And I had at least 5 senior housing complexes in southwestern Connecticut in my area that contacted me and said, "Oh, Lisa, I scheduled them to come." But the most important thing is your caller ID. Your caller ID may say Medicare Service Center or the Social Security Administration.
Scammers will spoof the numbers of government agencies, so you can't believe your caller ID. Never click on links in your text messages. If you believe that this purported email or a phone call is from a real government agency, look up the number and call them directly.
Medicare has over 62 million people that are on Medicare. So Medicare is not going to call you. People are not very familiar, but there's medical identity theft where people are taking people's Medicare numbers. They're using the Medicare number in doctors' offices and hospitals, and they're getting medical care under someone else's Medicare card. And that's very dangerous, because if that person goes to the same doctor, they may go to get treated for something that they don't even have. I had a story, young disabled woman that was pregnant that went into the hospital to have her baby. And this was a story that was told to me, I think back at least 7 years ago. And the woman went to the hospital to have her baby. She was under 65, disabled, on Medicare. And when she went, the nurse came to her and said to her, "Oh, this is your second baby. I know you're excited." And she said, I don't know what you're talking about, woman. I've never had a baby. And she said, no, no, this is your second baby. And the woman actually got angry. And she said, wait a minute, are you going to tell me how many kids I've had? This is my first child. And then she pulled the chart and come to find out someone had used her Medicare card, went into the hospital, had a baby under her name.
Can you imagine being told by a nurse that you've already had a baby when you're going to be a mother for the first time? The lengths these criminals will go to, it's just sick. Now, we'll tell you how some are committing fraud by using fear tactics.
Almost all government imposter schemes use a law enforcement angle, and they have a fairly high success rate because they use fear to encourage people to hand over money.
For us on the helpline, we hear about this, daily. It's saying that they got a text message, email, or phone call from someone claiming to be from the IRS saying that you're late on your taxes. But of course, they can help you today with payment of either gift card, cryptocurrency, peer-to-peer app, whatever their payment choice of the day is. And again, this just puts the victim under the fear.
According to the Federal Trade Commission, $445 million was lost to government imposter scams last year. The average loss, $3,000. And we have some additional data from Better Business Bureau Scam Tracker that shows that the largest amount a U.S. citizen lost to a government imposter scam last year was $270,000. That was one individual. We also had an individual lose $300,000 in a government grant scam. Sometimes the scammers will have some of your personal information already because of data breaches. They're able to find you, but just because they know a little bit about you doesn't mean that they are a legitimate agency. You have to remember the government is never going to threaten arrest over the phone. They're never going to make you pay a fee to get a new social security number because it was involved in drug trafficking or money laundering. In these cases, you need to hang up and call those agencies directly to get it sorted out.
IRS, Social Security, Medicare. It's been really helpful to learn all about these scams, but did you know that criminals are targeting veterans too? Troy is here to fill us in.
What I find people may find surprising is that veterans are being specifically targeted by scammers, okay? And the reason behind that is because these scammers know that, unlike civilians, individuals that are in the military and are service members, they have access to things that civilians do not, which is like pensions, additional benefits for serving our country. So that may be surprising to folks, but I will tell you, it is something that the scammers study, and they ensure that they can to target the veterans and their families. I want to share this story. This was a Desert Storm veteran, okay, and this is I'm a Desert Storm Army veteran myself, and this person here was actually, injured in combat when fighting for our country, and received a phone call about some free bogus medical equipment, and the scammer was very convincing, was very thoughtful, was not in a rush, and build the trust with this. And in some cases, even hung up the phone and said, I'll call you back. See, that's another tip that they'll say, well, you know what? I know you're busy right now. Listen, what's another time that we can talk? So now it's a second phone call. Now they were building this track record of that. And this individual here was sold that he was going to get this free equipment for only a nominal fee. He gave the credit card information. That credit card information turned in not to a nominal fee. It was hundreds and hundreds of dollars that was taken from this veteran, and there was no equipment. So, I shared that story. I know it was a couple of $100s, but let me tell you the shame that the victims have, it causes them not to report it. So we want to remove that shame and say this is a network of individuals that are trying to scam you. So we want to make sure that we share these stories so that we can tell people you're not alone, be equipped, be ready to fight back. According to the Federal Trade Commission, the Consumer Sentinel Network estimates that military and their family lost about 267 million in 2021, and that's up from 102 million in 2020 to fraud and identity theft. The research our research shows that turning over VA pensions into lump sum payments it's a big focus there. Paying for updating your military records, which you should never do, and then donating to fake charities. Those three areas led to the majority of the reported 267 million. But I just want to share one quick thing. A very important word in everything I said was reported. Reported 267 million. For those veterans and their families that have some shame around this, what we'll find is that they won't report it. So we want to encourage, as difficult as it may be, we need to report it so that we can identify it, so that we can ensure that these scammers are, put where they need to be.
Next up, we're going to talk about why fraud is more than just an individual problem.
I think we also need to look at this as almost a public health crisis, because the amount of money that is being lost from our economy, from our states' economies, from our cities' economies to these frauds and scams, to these criminal enterprises, it would really blow people's minds. Just this week, I personally have talked to a few people that one lady lost $80,000 in a crypto ATM machine, another one $67,000. And that's just me. We get 400 to 500 phone calls a day. And again, it's not just the money, it's the societal cost of these. I mean, people are losing their lives and dying by suicide. Families are being broken up. People are having health issues. We all need to look at these scams and fraud issues as a we problem, as a society problem, not just a, I'm so sorry that happened to you problem, because it really is affecting all of us.
She's right. This is an ongoing crisis. If someone you know has been targeted and needs emotional support, I highly recommend checking out AARP's REST program. That's REST program. These are small, peer-led support groups. Discussions are all confidential, and you can join by phone, tablet, or computer. Okay, back to Amy for one last message from the Fraud Watch Network.
If you have been a victim of a scam or know someone that has, don't sit in silence. I mean, come forward. Honestly, I don't care where you go, but go somewhere. Whether you feel more comfortable with your local police station, your attorney general's office. Certainly, we at AARP Fraud Watch Network, we're a free resource for anyone of any age, and you do not have to be an AARP member. And we have trained volunteers who will just sit and walk alongside of you. It's really important for us to know what's happening out there and for you to get guidance and emotional support. Sadly, the money's gone. But that, again, is just one part of this. You emotionally recovering and knowing what to do next is a significant factor in your emotional journey from this scam victimization.
Thank you for that important reminder, Amy. Remember, if you heard of someone being targeted in your area, or if you have been on the receiving end of a fraudulent act, call the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. Again, 877-908-3360. Together, we can catch these imposters and change the narrative on who is to blame. Not you. It's these criminals who are targeting you and your money. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Fighting Fraud with AARP Connecticut. Make sure to like and subscribe, and check back for new episodes. We hope you've learned how to spot these imposters so you can stop them in their tracks.
Join us for events in your community. Go to aarp.org/CT events. Look for the Con Artist Playbook by AARP Connecticut.